The Magicians Podcast, brought to you in association with the Magic Circle.
My guest today has a ton of achievements. We're going to talk about them all in the interview. But one of the most interesting ones I found out was that he was booked by Darren Brown to perform at Derren's dad's birthday party. Well, he must be good then, mustn't he? My guest today is John Archer. Hello everybody, welcome to the Magicians Podcast. I'm Richard Young. I hope you've had a good week. My guest today doesn't really need an introduction, does he? He was the first man to fool Penn and Teller on the Fool Us series, but when I was doing my research into him, I have to be honest, this interview could quite easily be 3 or 4 hours long. This guy's done so much stuff. But what we're going to do is we're going to stick to the rules. It's going to be 60 minutes. We're going to hopefully cover a lot of ground and get John's perspective on some topical things in the magic industry as well. It's going to be a really fun hour, and I don't think you're going to regret investing your time in this one. If you don't follow us on Twitter, please do it now. We are at Magician Podcast. No S on the Magician, at Magician Podcast. Or perhaps you could go onto Facebook and give our page there a like. Just search for the Magicians Podcast. Now, what is the point in you doing that, I hear you asking? Well, simply, every Tuesday I put up who my guest is going to be in the following week's episode. So, it keeps you up to date, maybe gets you a little bit excited about what's coming up. We're nearing the end of the series now, and I'm a bit sad, to be honest. We've got some great interviews lined up before we get to the very end, but it's going to be emotional when we get to episode 24. This project has taken up so much of my time. It's really unbelievable. I was very, very naive with regards to how much of my time this project would take up, and I do want to take the opportunity to thank my sponsors, Alakazam Magic, the Magic Circle, and of course Gigio, for making this project possible and allowing me to invest so much time in it and keep the quality of what we're doing here quite high. So let's get to the interview, shall we? Here he is, one of my favourite people in magic, and I'm sure he's one of yours too, Mr. John Archer. Here we are with John Archer. How are you, John?
I'm very well. How are you?
It's always odd to see you in London, but you're constantly going up and down the motorway, aren't you? It seems to be.
I have. I've literally, for the last 4 days, I've been. It literally, in fact, I put on my status update. It was north south, north south, north south, north south, and then home again. It's just, in fact, days where I've gone 250 miles north and 250 miles south again in the same day. Just mad. But
you're a high-profile member here, though, aren't you? You're Gold Star. And also your...
when you say, hey, we're at the Magic Circle, they don't know that yet.
It's in the intro.
Oh, do you do it in the intro?
I've done the intro.
Oh, I didn't hear that, see?
Actually, do you know what? I think I forgot to mention we're at the Magic Circle.
We
are. We're at the Magic Circle in one of the dressing rooms.
Yeah.
And
that's the desk.
That's it. Yeah.
That'll frighten people.
That did. But you're a Gold Star member, and also 2008 you won the Stage Magician of the Year. Are you you're a fond, proud member of the Magic Circle?
Yeah, I am a proud member, yeah. I mean, the MIMC and Gold Star and stuff... I mean, it's an honour, but I take it all with a pinch of salt, because there's some brilliant members who are just members, and there's some Gold Star members who you just think, oh, why have they got it? But that's the nature of it, isn't it? And everybody can be justified. So I am a proud member, but I take the whole hierarchy thing with a bit of a pinch of salt. I'd be quite happy if it went.
Really?
Yeah. Not that they're going to take any notice of me, but either it went or it was really... I mean, I listened to Noel Britton's, and, when he sort of ummed and ahed about accepting his, and I sort of agree that, I don't know whether I'm worthy of it or not. It's hard to judge yourself, isn't it? But I think it can be a great idea because it makes people aspire to stuff, but it can also be a bit divisive, and
yeah.
So, yeah, I'm a bit unsure about it, but proud that I was given it, obviously.
Which president gave it to you? Who was it?
It was David Bailey, I think. Michael Bailey, not David. He's the photographer, isn't he? Yeah, David. I think was it Michael Bailey? I think it was.
So you literally a phone call out the blue, and
I didn't even get a phone call. I didn't know I was getting it. I was at the Magic Circle dinner, and I was performing. My agent was there, funny enough, because my agent at the time also represented Rolf Harris. And Rolf Harris was the guest there, so my agent was also there, and I was doing the cabaret at the dinner, and they awarded me with the Carlton Comedy Award, and also gave me MIMC at the same time, so I had no clue at all. I was totally
That's nice.
gobsmacked by it all.
That's a nice way of doing it, though, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it was lovely. I'm not knocking it. Don't get me wrong. It's lovely, but I have questions about it, like everybody does, because it can go either way with people, can't it?
Yeah. Stockton-on-Tees,
Yeah,
is that right?
lived there all my life. Within a 10-mile radius of where I am now.
Yeah, and you're a policeman?
I was a policeman for 10 years, yeah. That's sort of the thing that everybody brings up. When I do gigs, it's sort of, we'll mention it in the introduction, and I go, well, fair enough, but I mean, it's just a job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's just, I suppose, it's the fact that it seems like a big leap from...
Well, I remember hearing in another interview you did, basically, you were doing sort of shows in schools, I think, weren't you?
What happened? Yeah, I got made school liaison officer. I didn't apply for it, and it was a bit of a job for the old boys who'd been in the job for 25 years. But because I did magic and so I was a joker, I got sort of headhunted. And it's like, John, do you want to do this role? And I was I think there was a lot of the older bobbies who'd been working for 25 years who were a bit annoyed that this guy who'd only been in 5 years has suddenly got this cushy number, because it was a cushy number. I worked 8 till 4, 5 days a week. I had weekends off. I could go and do shows at the weekend and stuff, and I still did riot training. I still went and had to do football matches at weekends now and again, but I had a pretty easy life. So yeah, the last 5 years of the 10 years I did in the police, I was really sort of going into schools and entertaining kids, just doing silly tricks and pulling 75 feet of chain out of my pocket and with my whistle on the end and all sorts of stupid stuff, really, telling kids stories with a rabbit in a police hat. So that was a good segue into when I did go full time.
So when you went full time, it was immediately staged. I don't think you've really ever done close-up magic.
No, I have done close-up magic. Yeah, when I went full time, I was doing a lot of school kid shows, because I had over 200 schools that knew me as PC Archer, who went in to talk to the kids. Suddenly I'm PC Archer, professional magician. So it was like, great, we'll have him to do it, because the kids love him, because they all knew me. Yeah. Because I used to go into every school within my job, talking about road safety and drugs and everything else. So I had loads of schools who just wanted me to do school shows. I didn't do many private house parties, but I did a lot of school shows for kids. And I did close-up as well, and I was doing close-up sort of all over the shop. I had a couple of residencies.
You had residencies as well?
Yeah, I had a couple of residencies. Me and a guy from Middlesbrough Circle, a guy called Darren Taylor, who was a bit of a mentor to me when I started. And he was sort of good friends with Paul Daniels, which I thought was like, wow, he knows Paul Daniels, Because Paul had sort of left the circle when I got involved. And Middlesbrough Circle, not the Magic Circle. And and we sort of did a residencies together where we'd alternate, weeks and stuff.
Yeah.
And I did that for quite a while. Then I decided that the kid shows were getting in the way of close-up and stage shows, cabaret shows. So I stopped doing kid shows just so that I didn't have to, regret taking one on because I had to turn down something else.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I have done, close-up shows within the last 4 or 5 years, but I don't do it very often. The only time I really do it now is if I'm booked for a cabaret, and it's a corporate type thing, and they say, will you come and do a bit of close-up to the the managers afterwards, or will you, and they want you to hang around in the bar and do a little bit, because all the close-up I do is just generic close-up. I don't do anything that's
more commercial compared to obviously your stage act.
Exactly. It's Crazy Man's Handcuffs, and it's Ambitious Card.
Do you enjoy it? Because you're a proper stage guy. Do you find it frustrating?
I don't really enjoy close-up. No. If I'm honest, I find it feels like I'm doing the job when I do close-up.
Yeah.
It's not so bad when you're just doing it in a small group, and I like doing it informally. If I'm somewhere, I'll always, if I go somewhere socially, I'll always have something in my pocket, some coins and probably a deck of cards and some elastic bands. And I enjoy it when the moment's right and I decide to do it. I don't like it when people say, come on then, show us something, and you feel like, I've got to work now, and I'm not at work. But I quite like doing it when I'm in control of how much I do and when I do it and how. I don't really enjoy it as a job. Yeah. If I'm booked for a gig for it, which is why I sort of stopped, really.
So organically, then you moved just into adult magic, cabarets, and also you were doing sort of. When did you start doing magic conventions? That's one thing I couldn't really work out in my research was when that started, like magic conventions and you putting out effects.
Pretty much around about the same time that I left the police. The very first thing I did was with a guy called Mike Smith, and we had an act called Archini and Smith.
Yeah, I've seen this.
Which, have you seen it?
Yeah.
And it was just a silly little 10-minute chain escape, really, but done in sort of a Victorian character. And we entered that in an Arabian competition, and I think we got third place. And then we got booked to do the Opus convention,
Right.
with Chris Power and JJ. One of the last ones they did over at the Isle of Man, which is just a brilliant convention, just great fun and a small group of people. And it was literally one of those things where when we went, it's an old joke, but you know that thing of I'm the only person I don't recognise. It was like that. It was just like Alex Elmsley and David Williams, and just literally there was about 30 or 40 people there, and every single one of them
Where
was a
did
name
this
in
used to
magic.
take place, the Opus
It used to take place on the Isle of Man, and
Right.
they got sponsorship through the Isle of Man Tourist Board. And they had a lovely Georgian, well, they still have, a lovely Georgian theatre there. It used to happen in this sort of hotel just up the road from where the theatre was, which had a casino attached. And like I say, it was a small group of people. They were all real, serious magicians, most of them. And it was great fun. It was great fun, but it was probably a bit self-indulgent from JJ and Chris, if they're honest. But why not? It was great fun.
Yeah.
So we did that, and then I just started thinking, well, actually entering competitions is good fun because you get these little conventions to do, and you get invited places. So I started doing a few more just to see where it go. We did a few more with Archie Smith, and then some on my own. And then I had a period where I did a lot. I've slightly pulled back on them a little bit now.
You were kind of at every convention for a few years.
I was for a while. I was, yeah, and I still do a couple a year. I still sort of do Blackpool now and again. Last year I hadn't planned to do Blackpool, and then I was pulled in last minute because Aldo Colombini died, and I wasn't booked, and it was literally a phone call 2 weeks before saying, from Derek saying, will you come and step in? And I felt like, well, I couldn't say no, really. But I quite like going to Blackpool just as a punt. I quite like going and just enjoying it, which is what I'll be doing this year. And then I do. Oh, is that you got a little text there, fella?
Look at me, like not turning off the
Yeah,
sound.
you should have turned that off, fella, isn't it?
Amateur mistake there.
Who's that? Sexy Peggy from Leeds. Who's she? And I do South Tyneside, of course, because that's local to me, and I'm quite involved in that one. But other than that, those are really, I don't do the IBM very much now. I haven't done the IBM for a long time. I haven't even attended it for a long time, to be honest. And
I do worry about that convention going forward a bit, really.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I used to love the IBM convention. I went every year, and it was a big convention, and we all used to meet there, and it was a real hangout convention. And I don't know what's gone wrong with it, really. I don't know what's happened. I mean, I'm sure there are people who go and still love it.
Yeah.
It's just there's a certain crowd that have sort of just drifted away from it, and I think I'm one of them. Well, I know I'm one of them because I haven't been for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
I turn up at the session, and sometimes Andy Gladwin will say, "Can I do something?" Well, I couldn't make it this year, so I'm not really as mad a convention person as I used to be.
I was going to sort of ask you, because there's a whole other side to you, which is like your writing credits. And I remember Fort Boyard, which you were part of it. I don't really understand how that. So you're a policeman doing magic, but how does that come into it?
Well, to be honest, Tim Vine is the big catalyst, and I met him when I was still in the police force. But I was there's a Christian festival that happens at Butlins, which is a bit weird, but this group take over Butlins, and just Christians go there, and they worship, and people speak, and they have entertainment. And I used to get roped in to do the entertainment there, and I did it and Tim was there one year, around about 1995, I think it was, 94, 95. I was still a policeman. He'd just gone full-time as a comedian, but hadn't done anything, and we became great friends. So I became friends with him before he was anybody, and before I'd done anything really.
Because he was like the face of Channel 5 when it launched, pretty much.
He was the first man on Channel 5, yeah. And I sort of wrote that when he did it. They had the Spice Girls, and then there was him, and I can't remember the name of the girl who did it. But anyway, because of that, one of the first shows he did on Channel 5 was Whittle. And what happened was, Tim got asked to do this show Whittle, and it was his first real. He'd done a pilot for the BBC called Housemates, which didn't go down too well. It was a daytime show, and then he got asked to do Whittle for Channel 5, and it was his first proper TV sort of series gig. And they said to him, "Look, we'd like to give you a writer," and they suggested his name, and he sort of said, and I'd known him for a few years by now, and they said, "Are you happy with that?" And he said, "Well, I'd rather have my mate writing it with me. I'd rather have John." Well, I'd never written anything at all. So I got this call from Tim saying, "You've got to come and have lunch with the producer." Now, I had nothing involved in television, so suddenly talking about producers, I thought they were really important people, and some of them are. But so I had to go, and we went to this restaurant. We sat down. There's me, and there was Tim, and there was this producer guy called Danny Greenstone who used to work on Game for a Laugh and various different things, and lots of sort of prime time, TV type stuff. And I'm sat chatting to him, and he says, "So what have you written for in the past?" And I said, "Well, I haven't written anything. What do you do?" I said, "Well, I've just left the police force," and I'd literally left about 6 months ago or something. He went, "Oh, right." He said, "Well, so what do you do now?" I said, "Well, I'm a magician." I said, "I'm a comedy magician, but Tim's my mate, and we have the same sense of humour, and he wants me to write with him." And Danny Greenstone went, "That's my hobby, magic. I love it." And he got a deck of cards out, and we just started showing each other tricks.
Oh, right.
And literally, it was sort of magic that got me in. So then, that was Pearson Television. So I worked on that. We did 2 series of that, like 65 shows each series. So we did 130 episodes of Whittle for Channel 5. Then he did a thing called Fluke, and there was another guy called Richard Hersey who worked with Danny Greenstone. The two of them were sort of producers that worked together at Pearson TV. And it was Richard really that just started offering me these writing gigs. So I wrote for John Culshaw, wrote for It's a Knockout with Keith Chegwin and what's his name, the boxer, Frank Bruno, and the Fort Boyard was just another thing that came out of that really.
Yeah.
I was working on that. So yeah, I got a lot of writing little stuff just through Tim really, and still working with Tim, writing different stuff. We've just been having a meeting this morning trying to get a script off the ground for the BBC. So
it's relentless, isn't it? Trying to get something.
It is long, and people get excited. You hear people. You talk to magicians, like, "Oh yeah, I've been asked to submit a pilot." And you go, "Oh yeah, great." They think, "Oh, that's it, I'm made." And you go, "Well,
Yeah. How much stuff? Do you mind me asking? How much stuff over the years have you worked on that never sees the light of day?
I've pitched to TV companies magic ideas, loads of them, maybe 20 or 30 different magic ideas. I've probably pitched 20 or 30 different game show ideas. None of them really come off. It's just relentless. If something comes off, you're very lucky. It's much nicer when people come to you and say, "We want to do something."
Yeah. Is that where Tim is now, where people are coming to him, or?
Yeah. People are desperate to use Tim, but equally they want the right vehicle. He's not. I don't think he's quite big enough now that he can just say, "Right, I want to do this," and they go ahead and make it. Here's the money. I think that he still has to convince them that he's got a vehicle that they like. But certainly in the last 3 or 4 years, he's more popular than he's ever been. His career's still on the rise. It hasn't peaked yet, I don't think. I think he's still got a way to go. But he turns down a lot.
Yeah. I just want to touch on something which you've mentioned a couple of times already, and that is you're a Christian and your faith and things like that. Something we've never talked about on this podcast. I'm very interested because I don't have God in my life, but
I can tell.
But also, I do wonder because there's a lot of magicians who are very public atheists, and are very outspoken on their Facebooks and Twitter. You're a Christian, but likewise, you're not.
No, I'm not very public about it, really. And part of that is because I don't think I'm a very good example of a Christian. So, I think if I start shouting about, do this, do that, and the other, it's quite easy for them to point to me and say, "Hang on a minute," when they see me drunk in a heap in the pile at the Ruskin or whatever. But it's part of that. But also, I think I'll talk about what I believe with people one-on-one. If they want to know, I'll talk to them about it. But I wouldn't want to preach about it in the same way that I wouldn't want somebody coming up to me and preaching to me about their philosophy of life if I didn't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
So and there are evangelistic atheists out there, and some of them do it really, really nicely and well. Darren Brown is sort of a open atheist, but I think he does it fairly, and he doesn't speak down to people. Richard Wiseman's another one. I consider them both friends, and I get on with them, and they know. They probably think I'm an idiot for thinking what I'm thinking, but I don't think they'd ever say that blatantly to my face because there's a mutual respect there. So I'm not really one that wants to. It's like politics. It's similar with politics, really. I don't hide the fact that I've got a faith, but equally, I'm not going to try and shove it down somebody's throat. And also, I don't want to try and make out that. I don't want to be a bigot and say I'm 100% definitely right.
Uh-huh.
I'm happy to accept. Maybe I am wrong, and maybe you're right. But it's sort of by and large, the big philosophy of it, and in my heart, it works for me. So that's why I carry on, really.
I found out something really interesting about you. You were the first guy to fool Penn and Teller, and you went to Vegas.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that in a bit. But something I did find out is that you had been to Vegas once before, and you were in a show called World Stars of Magic.
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
which was a Paul Stone thing. What was that all about? It sounded brilliant because it was.
Do you know what? That was funny because Jonathan Ross at the end of the show, he says to me, "Have you been to Vegas before?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And I'd been about. He said, "Have you worked in Vegas before?" I said, "No, I haven't." And I had worked in Vegas, and I'd been about 3 or 4 times before.
Yeah.
I've been to Vegas several times. But I was just at that moment, and I could feel the excitement, and nobody had fooled them, and the audience were genuinely excited about it. Jonathan Ross was obviously excited. I was close to tears at one point. And I just thought, if I said, yes, I've worked in Vegas before, it would just stolen that whole moment and made it seem like... So I just I lied basically, but it was just like I just thought I've just got to keep this excitement and I've got to play the game. But yeah, I had, and I worked Stars of Magic show for Paul Stone. Paul Stone's booked me for a few things actually. You know, he does a lot of great stuff. Paul, I think he's got a convention, hasn't he, this year coming up in
Vegas?
Liverpool. No, in Liverpool.
Oh really?
Innovation, yeah. I don't think much has been heard about it, but a thing called Innovation. I think there's only about 100 people going to be at it, and it's. I think it's similar to the thing he did in Vegas. Anyway, sorry, I'm going off the point. So yeah, he did this Stars of Magic thing in Vegas. It was sort of not on the Strip. It was about 5 or 6 miles out of the Strip, a little Gold Coast casino or something. But it was great fun. I was on there with Johnny Thompson and
Kevin James, I think was on.
Kevin James, Johnny Thompson, me. Who else? Oh, dear. It was a great bill. It was great fun. It was there for a week, and just to sit and chat to Johnny and Pam and Kevin James as well, just all really lovely people who've just been in the business so long, sort of.
Yeah,
was great. You just sort of think.
I was going to ask you actually, talk about fool us. Did you ever think you were going to fool them with that trick?
Do you know what? I didn't. It was funny because when the show came around, we were doing the special. When the series happened, there was a different feeling about it. But when the special was happening, there was this buzz went round that all the magicians heard about this thing, and everybody was getting, the call, do you want to be involved? And then there was all these conversations happening via email or one-to-one at different, magic things saying, is it possible to fool Penn and Teller? And the general consensus was, no, you can't fool them. There's sort of, certainly Teller, when you look at some of the books he's written and the amount that they're both seen, the general consensus was you can't fool them. And the funny thing was, I sort of thought, well, what could I possibly do? And I thought, the only thing I've got that is remotely my own, that is, I had actually been selling it for about a year, just via my website, and not many people had bought it. I knew Banachek had bought it, and I knew he knew Penn and Teller, and I thought, I hope he hasn't shown them it. But I thought, the only thing I've got is the envelope thing, because it was a brand new method, and I was quite proud of it. But I thought they'll use common sense and work it out. And then Johnny Thompson, who was the guy behind the scenes who decided whether you'd fooled them or not, and sort of up in the gallery with Peter Davis and the gang. Is it Peter Davis, the producer? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And he said to the producer, he said, oh, you should get John to do his Magic Square. It's really funny. So at one of the rehearsals, they said, Johnny Thompson says your Magic Square is really good. I said, well, it's funny. I said, but it won't fool anybody. Wouldn't fool my mother. It's just obvious what's going on. It's just maths. It's and a pattern. It's just I don't think it really fools lay people that much. They just think, oh, there must be a set way. They're impressed with how quick you do it. And I sort of stood my ground, and they made me do it. And I performed it in one of the rehearsals, and and they said, that's great. Why don't you do that? I said, because it won't fool them. I know it won't fool them. And I said, if I'm going to do it, I want to do the envelope thing. But I didn't think it was going to fool them. And then we were stood, and the way the show was made is you're not allowed to meet Penn and Teller at all. They sort of kept Penn and Teller really separate from us. And also they had this thing that once you'd gone out and done your bit, you were taken to a separate room. So you never talked to the acts who'd just gone out and performed. So you couldn't say, what was it like, or blah, 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 or give me any tips. So of course they were all going out. And also you didn't know whether anybody had fooled them. Because you didn't have a monitor, so we're in a dressing room. It's right, you're next, and you think, I wonder if anybody's fooled them next. But I got a little word. I sort of spoke to one of the crowd. I said, anybody? No, nobody's fooled them yet. And I sort of just heard, and then Jonathan Ross was really sweet. I don't get nervous very often. I didn't get nervous when I was doing their show in Vegas afterwards, but I did get nervous on the TV thing. And if you watch it, I watch it and I can see I'm nervous. And
why? All the gigs you've done, why were you nervous there? Was it because you did want to fool them? Or
it wasn't because I did want to fool them. I was nervous because I knew why they were watching me. They were watching me purely to work out. You know when you first start magic and you're nervous because you think somebody's going to see my thumb tip, or you're nervous because, hang on a minute, they might see me do a double lift, and you get nervous because you think people, and then you realise actually these people don't know what they're looking for, and then you get a bit more relaxed. And but I knew Penn and Teller were there watching me with the sole aim of trying to work out what I'd done, and we don't really go out. We know that's happening, but we don't worry about it as magicians normally because we just know that what we've got works for lay people. And if it's for magicians, we don't care. We don't care that they know. So if I'm performing a magic convention, I don't worry that they know how I'm doing it because I think, well, they're magicians as well. But when their sole aim is to fool them, it's frightening. And I never looked at them. So I went out, like I said, Jonathan Ross was really sweet, and he said, I saw you in rehearsals, really funny, you're going to have a great time. And he sort of calmed me down a bit, but I was still heart pounding. And then I went out, and I never looked at them for the first, I don't think maybe the first 2 minutes. My gaze goes right in the middle. My gaze goes from the left, and then I go up across the top of the audience and down to the right. And I don't actually look them in the eye. And the first time I look them in the eye, I think, is around about when the second envelope's been picked. And I did a gag, and it got a big laugh, about one of the envelopes, or about the guy's name. I can't remember what it was. And I felt just that when I got that laugh, I felt relaxed, and I looked, and Penn, so his head was back, and he was laughing. And Teller was no laugh at all. He wasn't even looking at me in the eyes. He was just staring straight at the envelopes. And so I looked for a minute, and I just thought, he is burning my hands. And then I never looked at them again for a while until the end. But yeah, nerve-wracking, and nobody thought they were going to fool them, really. I thought Ben might fool them, because there's been a lot of controversy.
Ben Earl,
yeah. Been a lot of controversy about whether Ben did what he really did. He definitely did what he said he was doing. He definitely was just tracking those cards with shuffles. It wasn't false shuffles. He knew where every ace was, and he kept a track of them all. And that's what he was doing. And I've never seen anybody else do it. But I'd watched him in rehearsals doing it with me, with brand new decks of cards, and me shuffling them. And it wasn't always aces. It was different cards. But I just thought, that's phenomenal. And I honestly thought Ben might fool him. I thought, and he did. And I thought Ben's the only one really in that show that would fool him. And I'm glad he did, because I ended up going out with him, and we had a great time.
If I'd have been in your position, I'd have been a bit gutted when I heard it was going to be a series, because you were the two guys. Did it?
Yeah.
Did it? What was your thought process when you heard suddenly 40 magicians are going to be on the show?
Well, I don't know really. I wasn't really that gutted. I thought it's inevitable. I suppose there was part of me was thinking, well, I hope nobody else fools them. But then I thought we'd all sort of realised then that, they hadn't fallen from grace a bit, but we'd realised Penn and Teller are human. And they're just like every one of us, that if you do the right things in the right way. And also people realised what the game was now. Suddenly people realised actually you can lead them one way with something, or you can, so it suddenly became a different thing. But I wasn't really gutted. I was sort of pleased in a way, because it meant when they were making the series, it meant that they sent a film crew with us to Vegas, and that meant that we got trekked probably better than, well, I know we got
no doubt whatsoever.
We got treated better than anybody else, because of course everybody else who then fooled them, there was no real reason to give them any more than what they needed to give them, and so we went out and we were treated really well, and we had stretch limousines and champagne and helicopter rides and car rides and all sorts of stuff. And the other guys that went, they got what they were promised. They went to Vegas and performed for them, but of course there was no need for them to.
They knew it wasn't coming back for a second series by that point, didn't they?
I think they probably did, and even if it was, they sort of, I can understand it. Why would they want to spend thousands on sending people out there when they can spend $1,000 and just get them out there and get them back?
Yeah. Look at that, nearly half time already.
Is it time for Giggy-o?
Why don't you go and get the ukulele and we can do
it's miles away. I'd have brought it if you'd said.
Here's the messages from our three sponsors: the Magic Circle, Alakazam Magic, and...
Three now?
Yeah.
How long has it been 3?
Alakazam are on board. Fantastic. Peter Nardi. They've got no jingle, but they've got a good little advert here, which we have recorded. And of course, Giggy. Here are our sponsors.
The Magicians Podcast, brought to you in association with the Magic Circle, the world's premier magical society. Are you ready to join the world's most exclusive magic club? Visit themagiccircle.co.uk to find out more.
Whether you're new to magic or a seasoned professional, Alakazam Magic are here to help. Alakazam have been supplying magic to magicians for well over 20 years. Not only do we carry all the latest and greatest magic tricks, books and DVDs, but we also manufacture one of the finest ranges of magic tricks in the world. The Alakazam name is synonymous with great customer service, educated advice and honesty. So if you're shopping for new magic, make sure you check out our website, www.alakazam.co.uk, or pay a visit to our fully stocked shop.
Gigio, free for 30 days. Be a pro, get Gigio.
Yes, that's right, my friends. It's that time of the week again when we talk about Gigio. If you don't know what it is, it's a web-based software designed for professional magicians and entertainers. It can be used worldwide. When a booking comes in, you go onto the Gigio website and enter all of your clients' details and all of the event information. The software then generates an email which gets sent directly to your client, and all of the information also gets automatically updated in your diary. At the same point, it generates a PDF contract for you as well. Read what other entertainers are saying about it, and if you visit the Gigio website right now, which is spelled Gigio, you can take a free 30-day trial. All the top professionals are using this software. You really are missing out if you're not using it right now. There have also been some brilliant new features added in early 2015, which means it now works even better on a worldwide basis. That's gigio.co.uk. Tell them that we sent you. Just a tiny quick little thing. I'm sure from time to time when you're out and about at magic conventions or you're at the Magic Circle, you may bump into some of my guests who you've listened to on this podcast. If you do, tell them that you listened to the podcast. Tell them if you enjoyed it. Give them some feedback. They were very kind to give up their time to talk to me, and hopefully you got something from these interviews. Okay, that's it. It's time now to go back to Mr. John Archer. So, this is an amazing gig that you did, which I found out. Brilliant. Darren Brown booked you to do his dad's birthday party.
He did, yeah. I know, that was nerve-wracking.
Did he ring you, or is it?
No, Coops, his main man, emailed me and just said his dad's 70th birthday party, and
you're his magician of choice.
I was his magician of choice, and I wish I'd done a better job, really. But it was funny because I was doing a dice routine and it fell apart. A few things went wrong. I was a bit nervous. It was lovely. It was absolutely lovely. I'll tell you what was nice about it. It wasn't in any way showbiz. It was Derren and his family in, I don't know how much I'm allowed to give away, I'm sure he wouldn't mind, but it was Derren and his family in a sort of a function room of this nice golf club, just having a party. And it was sort of, what was really sweet about it, it was sort of, Derren was there on the microphone going, Uncle George, can you sit down now? Bob's going to make a speech. And it was all just very family. It was really sweet, and Derren didn't have the limelight, but he had his camera there and he was taking pictures. It was just a typical lovely family do. But then there was me and there was juggler Rod Laver.
Right.
Do you know Rod Laver?
No, I don't know Rod.
Brilliant ping pong juggler, and he juggles ping pongs and fires off a backboard. There was me and him, and he sort of introduced us and blah blah blah. But then he was sat. It was in the velvet suit days, in the velvet jacket. He was sat there in his sort of lovely velvet jacket on the front row with his camera taking pictures, with a big smile on his face, a big grin, and that was another gig where I was probably a little bit nervous. But I offered to do it for nothing, I think, and he insisted on paying me, which was lovely. But if I'd have done it for nothing, it was still worth the gig, because it's just a great thing to have.
Yeah,
it's a great thing to have on your website. And I said to Derren, I said to him, will you give me a quote from it? And he was lovely. He's lovely. Darren's a lovely guy. But so that was a great gig.
I'm interested to know, actually, because you are very busy, and I know you do lots of. What are some other interesting gigs you've done? Sort of,
do you know what? I last year, probably the most amazing gig I had. I went out to. There's a few guys, magicians, who've gone out to the Seychelles and done gigs for this guy, and it's he's a prince, a Saudi Arabian prince, and his father's the king. He's the king of Saudi Arabia who's just died, I think.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, I went out there January last year, and then I got asked to go out again later in the year, and it was for his father, so it was the king of Saudi Arabia in this little hotel in the Seychelles. And he has the hotel, and then he has his own complex with his own entertainment complex, his own theatre and everything. And they had girls from the Crazy Horse dancers there. They had an Italian Royal Opera company there. Kev Orkian, the keyboard player, he was there. Various different people were there.
This is a theatre with people in, or is this just literally
it's a full theatre, but there's just sofas with about 30 people, right? So it's amazing. A couple of Saudi Arabian princes and the king. Anyway, I didn't do the gig in the end. I did the one in January where I went out just for the prince, but I went out for this one, and we did all the rehearsals. They had a woman who, I can't remember her name now, but she smashed cans and rocks with her boobs, basically. She'd had a boob job, and she used to just lift one and smash things with it. It's like a karate expert with her boobs. It was ridiculous. They had Cirque du Soleil acts and everything. Anyway, we had a rehearsal during the day. I was in the Seychelles for about 4 days. We had a rehearsal on the day of the show was on the night, and the rehearsal ran to about 4 hours long or something. But then the king or the prince decided there was some football on they wanted to watch, so the show wasn't going to start till 11:30 at night. And the guy who's organising it said, we're going to have to cut the show in half. So half of the acts, basically half of the acts got cut, and most of them were speaking acts, because languages, it's not a problem, but if you're going to cut anything, cut the speaking act. So I never did it. So I got paid a silly amount of money and did that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And the other gig I did, which I always talk about, probably the best gig, is I got booked to go to Iraq. I don't do them now, but I used to do a lot of troop shows, and I went to Afghanistan and did the troops for a week. But I got booked to go to Iraq, and I think the money at the time was $8,000 for a week in Iraq.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why you do them, and
it's a bit of danger money there.
It is. It's a bit of danger money. Well, a lot of danger money, and also just the conditions aren't great. You're in a rough tent with spiders walking around. And
what's that like when you fly into a war zone, though? I'm sure they tell you.
Yeah, it's scary because you're flying in army planes and helicopters and Scorpion tanks and everything. It's mad. But anyway, the Iraq thing got cancelled a week before because they're very much like, the troops are suddenly doing something, so they can't have the show. And in my contract, it was I got paid half the money if the gig got cancelled within 6 weeks or something. So I got paid $4,000 for not going to Iraq. And I remember I rang my agent up. I said, I'm available not to go to Iraq again next week if you want me to. But yeah, I had some weird gigs and great gigs. I don't do gigs like that.
What I love there,
I don't do those at all now. But
I've asked you for some of your favourite gigs, and basically you're a proper worker because your favourite gigs are the ones where they get cancelled and you still get paid.
Yeah, well, no, that well, actually, yeah, two of those both got cancelled. I both got paid, but I'd always rather do the gig than not do the gig.
Yeah.
There's some people who they love the fact I don't have to work, but if I have a choice, I'd rather do the. I love being on stage.
You do a lot of church shows as well, right?
Yeah, but that's because of the fact that so it happened because I had a faith, and then I got booked to do a church because people knew me from a different church, and what happened is I've just built up a sort of a name for myself among, I suppose, in the Christian world, which is a bit of a weird sort of thing to talk about, but among churches and lots of different denominations within the Christian church, I'm known, and they'll book me for all sorts of type of stuff. Sometimes it's just a social event, but they just know that they know that I'm singing from the same hymn sheet, which sounds a bit corny, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They don't want to book somebody who, obviously they don't want to book somebody to sit and entertain them who's suddenly going to blaspheme or say what you believe is all rubbish. So yeah, I do a lot of them, and as a result, I also do quite a lot of charity shows. Yeah. But I charge for charity shows. I don't charge a lot, but I charge for charity because I do so many. I couldn't do them all for nothing. So I have sort of a charity rate.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do quite a few.
So in recent years, something you've been working on, and I know you're a writer, is Help My Supply Teacher is Magic, which is on.
Yeah. And Help My School Trip is Magic, and Help My Supply Teacher is still magic.
It's still going, and it's
BAFTA winning.
I'm aware it won a BAFTA. I saw the photo.
Yeah.
How did the concept of that show come about? Was it you and Anthony, or Anthony's idea?
It was all Anthony Owen's idea, but I think, and he might correct me if I'm wrong on this, it was inspired from a strand from a show that we did on Sky, which was called Undercover Magic, which was Sky 1, and I think after episode 1 got moved to Sky Mix. It wasn't massively.
This was you and Loki. And
this is me, Loki, Kerry Scorer, Mark Paul,
Max Somerset,
and Max Somerset. Yeah, there's 5 of us in it. But one straight, and that was a hidden camera magic show, and there was some brilliant bits in it. I mean, Mark Paul doesn't like it, bless his cotton socks, but there's a brilliant Pepper's Ghost routine where he plays this sort of ghost expert, and he was brilliant in that. And there's some, he had some other brilliant bits, and we all had really high moments in it, and we all had moments that we probably didn't enjoy that much. But one of the strands which I really enjoyed was a bit where I was a teacher, and it was just my little bit. Nobody else did it, and I went into school and I sort of wore glasses on the end of my nose and had my hair greased in a centre part, and I looked a right geek. I do anyway. But and we did this little strand where the kids were there, and it really stood out, I think, as being really sweet. These kids seeing magic and thinking it's real. I think it's, hidden camera magic's great, but when it's kids who haven't yet learned that magic can't happen, and they see you turn a paper bird into a real bird, and it's like, what? And they all want to, see if they can fly or whatever. And so Anthony, I think, saw that and said, hang on, this could be a whole show, and developed it as a concept, and used the clip of me doing it on Undercover Magic as part of the pitch document.
Right, okay.
So when he pitched at the channels, so everybody else sort of, were auditioning and whatever, but I sort of bypassed the auditioning process. I say a little bit, I sort of did bypass the auditioning process, because he came to me and said they like you, because they'd already seen me. So that was sort of my audition, I suppose, that video clip. Do you want to be in it? And I thought it sounded like fun, to be honest.
Were you actively involved in the selection of the other members of the cast?
No, not at all. Let me think. Was I? No, I wasn't. No, they were chosen. I knew Catherine, but I didn't know Fergus, and I didn't know the other guy, the bald one.
When you work on a project like that, I mean, are you literally turning away normal gigs and stuff?
Not much, no. No, because Anthony Owen's very good at. He knows that we all have to earn a living. He knows that the money we're getting for these shows, it's not vast amounts. It's it's CBBC. It's not BBC One Saturday Night. So, and the amount of time and effort you're putting in, I think he realises these guys have to live as well and have to work. So they tend to objective work around us to a certain extent. They'll expect us to try and give priority to them a lot of the time, but I give them the diary and they say, right, we want to film this, and I'll say, well, actually I've got a gig that day, and they'll say, great, well, okay, well James can film on that day, and they'll move it around. So they they're very good at making sure that we're not, because obviously if I had turned down money for 3 months, I'd be no better off doing the TV show. In fact, I'd probably be worse off doing the TV show. I would be worse off. So
I asked Pete Furman a similar question to the question I'm about to ask you.
I enjoy Pete. I love Pete.
I listened to his just the other day. You're generally, a lot of magicians, Paul Daniels included, and lots of other high-profile names sort of say you should be a star, really, and you should be a household name. And obviously, for one reason or another, the John Archer Magic Show on Saturday nights didn't happen. When you're involved in a project like Help, where you're sharing the bill with other magicians and a gimmick as such in terms of the kids, does that bother you? Not really, no. I probably got over it about 10, 15 years ago. I got over the fact that, there isn't a room at the moment for a one-off Saturday night magician. I think there will be very soon. I think somebody will maybe get it, and whether it's Ben Hanlon or one of these guys, it's not going to be me. It's going to be somebody younger than me. I think I could be part of something, possibly, if something happened, but no, I'm not too worried. No. The thing is, I love doing what I do, and I mean the thing I'm working on with Tim, is a sitcom, and I'll be acting in it, and I'd love to do some acting and sitcom and comedy and stuff, where magic isn't involved. So I really enjoy what I do. I sort of love performing. I love doing gigs. When I took time off over Christmas, and when I came back, I was just so glad to be doing gigs again and setting my stuff up. If I get no more fame than I've already got, which is very small, although 2 kids did point at me and
Sainsbury's today. But if I get no more fame than I've got now, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
I know that if Anthony Owen could, do something with me, he said he would. I know people see my talent, but equally, having talent and also being right for what's available on television are two different things.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Can I ask you some quick-fire questions?
Yes, like this.
That'd be all right. So, who's your favourite magician, first of all time?
It's very hard to say, because I do have a lot. I know everybody says David Williamson, but he's just fun. He's just great fun. I've been fortunate enough to work with him a few times, and it's just, it's scary how he'll just go off on one and not worry about, he just seems to know what he's doing perfectly. I loved Harry Blackstone Jr., some of the stuff he did. Copperfield, obviously, great.
You're a big Copperfield fan, are you?
Yeah, I grew up on those Copperfield specials, watching all of those things. So, yeah, quite a few people. I love Matt King. I love Penn and Teller. There's loads and loads of people I love, and to try and pin it down to one would be hard, really.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to pin it down to one, because I'd feel, and I can guarantee there'll be loads of people I've just missed out who, I listen to some of these and think, why haven't I got to mention? Why haven't you mentioned how you like John Archer? but it's, so there'll be people who'd be doing the same thing, listening to this, saying, well, I can't believe he didn't mention me. Pete Furman, I love Pete, I love what he does. Paul Daniels, Wayne Dobson, tons of them. Jeffrey Derren, I loved. When he was doing the Best of Magic, I thought that was great, even though he hates it, but I loved it.
This is a two-part question. We'll talk specifically about tricks here. Favourite trick, first of all, that you perform?
Favourite trick that I perform? I've heard other people answer this in the same way, and it is very much the new thing I'm working on tends to be the favourite. So at the moment I've got a trick which I call a Laura Buxton coincidence, which is about a coincidence involving a girl called Laura Buxton in a red balloon. And I've got this little routine, and it's still not there, and I'm adding gags and I'm playing with it, and that becomes my favourite thing. I suppose my blindfold routine, if you went to past thing, I love the blindfold routine. It's a bit of a signature piece for me.
How about a favourite trick for you that another magician performs? You can give a few examples here, because that's ridiculous.
Do you know what? I did have one, and the one I always quoted, and it's probably been superseded, but the one I always quoted was Harry Blackstone Jr.'s floating light bulb when he did it at the IBM 50th anniversary at Eastbourne. It's the only convention my wife's ever come to me with, and she didn't really enjoy it. She got sick of seeing doves and playing cards, and just said, go on your own from now on, which is great. Because it's just a hassle when you've got your wife with you, isn't it? But she was with me, and we were quite close. I don't know how it happened, but we were quite close to the front, maybe only about 6 or 7 rows from the front. And he did this thing, where he said, he has the light bulb, and he's floated it in the air, and he walked in the audience and just let people examine it. He holds it above their head and it floats. And he goes back and says, what, you haven't seen it? I went, okay, I'll let you see it, but promise that you won't touch. And he had this amazing voice, and the light bulb floats away from the stage. And I've seen Hans Klopp do it, but it doesn't have anywhere near the gravitas that it had when he did it, and it floats across the audience's head, and you're looking up, and I remember looking up and seeing this light bulb, and then it floated across the audience, and then it floated back to him through the hoop, and and it was just a magical moment for me. It was just like, wow. And that was probably, if not superseded, but equalled when I saw Jan Frisch at Blackpool. And I didn't see him in the close-up, and people had said, there's a guy in the close-up, Jan Frisch is brilliant. And then I heard, he's so good, they're going to put him in the gala show tonight. And what does he do? It's a cups and balls routine. I thought, cups and balls routine on stage. And I was right up in the balcony. And he came out, and I didn't have a clue. I just know he's a close-up guy, he's going to do some cups and balls thing. And then he started doing that routine, this sort of madman. And I fell in love with it like that. And I've given standing ovations before, but usually people have stood up and I've thought, yeah, I'll join them. That was the only time I've ever watched magic and didn't care what anybody else was going to do. I decided I was going to stand up, and I just stood up in the balcony. It was just, it was phenomenal. It was just absolutely. It wasn't even. It didn't even feel like a trick. It just felt like just a performance of magic. Just like it was just, I love it.
I heard a rumour you did Britain's Got Talent once. Is that true?
Very first Britain's Got Talent. Yeah.
You did it?
Yeah. And it was before the days when they were sending me emails saying we'll put you straight through to the live rounds. And what happened was the very, very first one, and I thought I'll go and do something. And it was the days when I was doing a lot of prop gags still, before Noel Britain had told me to stop. and I went along, and it was, you know, a hotel full of just thousands of people. And I remember coming to the camera saying, "Why are you doing this?" I said, "Well, I do it for a living. I just thought it might be nice to get seen." And they were obviously, I didn't realise it at the time, but they were obviously looking for a backstory, which, you know, since then we've realised. But the show had never been on, so I didn't know what they were after. And then they said, "Right, you can come and do your audition." And I went into it wasn't a hotel room, it was like a little tiny function room, literally about 10 feet square. And there was 2 girls behind a desk who, I'm not exaggerating, there were probably 17 or 18 researchers, and there was tiny little, you know, disposable camera, one of these little digital cameras on a tripod stand, and said, "If you just do your 3 minutes into that camera, please." And and they didn't even watch me, they didn't even look, they were down writing on the paper, and I looked at the camera and I started doing prop gags to this camera, and of course I rely on audience reactions and stuff, and I slowly lost the will to live, and I swallowed a balloon, I think, I did. You know, my name's John Archer, I've made a name for myself, pulled it apart, carried a pigeon, cut the gags. And I went, "Thank you very much," and that was it. I walked out, never heard another peep from them.
As we sort of mentioned earlier, you're like a, you know, working professional in the absolute truest sense of the word. You're out there doing it, you're involved, you're creative. What sort of things in magic drive you mental?
People just doing generic tricks with generic pattern. I just... and the biggest example of that, and you know, I don't want to upset anybody who's doing it, and I'm sure I've got friends who do it, but vanishing bandana, it's karaoke magic for me. Yeah. You know, it's there's no spark of, you know, I don't mind somebody doing it if they, you know, people say, "Oh, well, I've made my own tape," and all they've done is got a different voice doing it, but it's still the same lines. And I'm just saying, well, just use the concept of having a tape and come up with your own idea.
Yeah.
So I don't like generic stuff really. I much prefer it if people. But I can understand why it happens. You know, because, you know, we all buy DVDs, and I've produced DVDs that have a trick with a pattern, and people just think, well, it'll work for me, and I don't have to put any thought in. And I always try and sort of say, look, you know, come up with your own ideas, do this. But
are there any...
and then again, actually, you know, when I started, I was doing Tommy Cooper jokes, and I was doing generic stuff. So even though I hate it, I can see why sometimes people have to go through that phase.
Yeah.
To
Derren said it international a few years ago, didn't he?
Yeah.
It was quite controversial, but they asked him what advice he'd give a young magician. He said, "Copy until you find your own way."
Yeah, and I think to a certain extent that's sort of true. You can't expect to be a brilliant scriptwriter and everything else immediately. So maybe just find something that works and then start adding your own touches and your own personality and your own character, and you find out who you are. But some people don't. They never find out who they are, and you watch them and they've been performing for 30 years and you go, you still don't really know who you are on stage.
I know some of your friends will be listening to this, but I really...
Both of them, possibly.
I was really hoping for a genuine answer for this question in terms to, is there a young magician, a younger talent that you see out there at the minute who you go, that he or she could be the next Derren, the next Dynamo, something like that? So I know you do have your finger on the pulse with...
Yeah, I don't know about the next Derren or the next Dynamo, but Ben Hanlon and Ben Hart, both of them, who I love to confuse and you know, annoy them by calling them by the wrong name, although they never realise I'm actually having fun. But they're both good looking and talented, and sort of that's what you need to get on. It'd be lovely if there was a female who I could say definitely that's going to happen for. I'm not sure whether there is or there isn't really. It's hard for female magicians, you know. Sadly, it is a bit of a man's world. Those two, possibly. I'm trying to think. I don't think they'll be the next Dynamo or Darren Brown. They'll be the next Ben Hart or Ben Hanlon. Or,
yeah, of course, yeah.
Or Troy, possibly. To be honest, I haven't seen much of Troy. I never watched any of the series, and I've only heard of him. I've never seen anything done, but a lot of people talk about him, so possibly him. I mean, you know, audition people at Objective now and again, and I sort of see people performing different bits and bobs. either officially or unofficially. I sort of see these things, and it's hard to find somebody who's got everything immediately. And if you look at Derren, didn't have everything when he first started. Derren learned very quickly. Dynamo, didn't have everything straight away. He might not have everything yet. Who knows? Live show coming up later this year, we'll find out. But people can be made to a certain extent, so long as they have something, and so long as somebody believes in them. So who knows who it'll be? Could be somebody none of us have ever heard of that just steps up and suddenly gets grabbed.
You've got an amazing gig coming up later this year. You're on tour with Tim again.
Yeah,
and you're playing much bigger. I saw you guys about 4 or 5 years ago when you were on tour, and you were playing, smallish mid-range. But you're playing big venues this time round, aren't you?
Yeah, but you know what? We could play. I say we. I couldn't. Tim could play massive venues if he wanted to, but he deliberately wants to play smaller venues. The last tour was the Chat Show, and he deliberately wanted it 500-600 seaters. This one we're going a bit bigger, and I think the biggest one's maybe 1,600-1,700. But he, the tour manager guy, the tour organizer, Nigel at Bound and Gagged, he sort of pulls his hair out sometimes saying I could fill these places, because the tour's pretty much sold out. Yeah. And we could do bigger places, but yeah, I love that. The tour is great fun. Yeah.
And you're on the road with your mate, aren't you, as well? That's the thing.
Yeah. There's me and there's 3 of us. There's me and there's a guy called Andrew Jobbins, who's the tour manager, who's just a great laugh, great sense of humour. He could be on stage himself, really, but I don't know why he doesn't. But he's very funny. And there's just the 3 of us, and we travel around. We play silly games. We have competitions. We have a little trophy. We'll say, right, it's pitch and putt, and we just laugh and have great fun.
Fantastic. Final question, John Archer. What advice would you give to a young magician who is perhaps listening to this podcast?
Listen to all of the other podcasts. There is some great advice on them.
Oh, that's a really nice answer.
No, there is some great advice, and I'd probably just give the same advice. Practice, find out who you are, try and be original.
John, thanks so much for doing it. It's been great fun. Really loved chatting to you. Thanks again. Cheers.
Thank you. Oh, handshake.
Yeah, they don't see that
on the radio. Podcast. Handshake. Let's do it near the mic.
There you go. That actually hurts.
Yeah, sorry.
Excellent stuff. I hope you got something from that. Thank you so much, John, for your time. It was great chatting to you. Now, if there's any spare tickets left, go and see Tim Vine's next live show. John Archer is the opening act each night. He does a blistering 30-minute set, and it's always an education watching him perform for a live audience. Tim Vine and John Archer are touring from the 1st of April through to the 13th of June 2015. It shouldn't be missed if they're coming anywhere near you, and there are some tickets available. Next week is the final week of the series, and we're going to go out with a bang, with a double bill. My guest will be Jamie Allen, star of the iMagician tour, and without question, one of the highest profile close-up magicians in the country, Nick Einhorn. You should not miss it. Have a great week. I'll see you next Friday.